So, hey people, this is an ASI class and we are wrapping up the study by Fagen by evaluating it today. Okay, so here's a couple of evals that you can do. I'll be, of course, there's even more evals coming up on the drive. So I'll be giving you an evaluation document on this that is going to separately have all the evaluations. Okay. So please make sure you do that. And then those evals, you're going to basically be able to, you will have to use them to develop your, particularly your 10-mark question. You also have your short questions on evaluations. But then there is the question that, a lot of kids get anxiety about, and there's no need to get anxiety about it, is the 10-mark question about how do you write the answers to that. And those are basically your evaluative skills. So you need to understand the evaluation, and then you need to know the structure in which you have to complete an evaluative point in your paper. Okay. So we'll talk about that. Let's complete the evaluation today. So now the first point is, so we just discussed in the last class, we had a long discussion about the ethics for animal ethics, and we did it for Fagen particularly. Now, they've just we applied it to many of the ethical guidelines for animals for Fagen. Do you remember? And we also applied some of those to Hassett as well. So over here for ethical issues, they've just given you one example or one point as an example. You can develop very similar points on the other points that we discussed in the video in that lecture. And if you missed that lecture, it's on the drive. You can check it out. It's called Animal Ethics. There is a document next to it as well with all the content. And then there is a video explaining and applying those things to the two studies that are in your syllabus on animals. Okay. Acha. So now ethical issue, the first one is distress. Okay. I'm the point that they're making. So they're going to make an ethical point about distress and apply it to Fagen. Okay. So one strength. So the point you explain that you're about to write a strength, that's a good technique. You should do it either in the beginning or in the end. Got it? Ideally, don't repeat yourself, okay? Because, space is a concern for us and time is a bigger concern for us. So you want to try and make sure that you guys clearly state if you're writing a strength or a weakness. Got it? So is that ethical guidelines were followed for both the animals as well as the trainers. So they're basically applying this to both humans and animals. Despite the elephant's leg chains, okay, they were able to walk away from the trainers, which was around 6 to 8 feet, if they did not want to participate, right? So the chains still allowed the elephant to move freely enough within their stalls by giving them a room for around 10 feet. You could write that. Okay, it was 6 to 8 feet. You could write 6 8. Okay, you want to try and increase that. You want to mention the higher side because you're trying to give evidence for that it was ethical. So if it's ethical, then you want to use the evidence that tells you the maximum length. Does that make sense? Okay. Because it doesn't mean that because you don't have a lot of time and a lot of space. So you want to be very efficient with your answers. So this is important as it helps reduce stress or psychological harm of the animals as well as so this is the impact. This is the impact. Okay. You're saying it's a strength. Okay. It followed, this is the ethical guideline that it followed and it's a strength. Then you give the argument with the evidence. Okay. And then you tell us the impact on that. This is important as it helps to reduce stress or distress, psychological harm of animals, as well as the risk of physical harm to the trainers, observers, or mawats. Okay. You can write all three of them. This is a good idea. Who could have been injured if the elephant became uncooperative. But in fact, you can also add to this point that if an elephant does become uncooperative or even, perhaps attacks the humans, there is also the risk of the elephant hurting itself. Okay. So because they can, God forbid, become quite a bit aggressive. Okay. So elephant attacks are pretty intense. Okay. So you could add that point over here. And so that would make for a decent ethical point. Okay. And as an evaluation, right? So let's just show you. We've already had this discussion, right? So when you're building points, right? So point making is a really important skill. So I'll just do it quickly over here. So you can say that the Fagen study is ethical because it tried to reduce pain, suffering, and distress. So first, I will mention that it is ethical, or one strength of the study is that it is ethical. I'm adding to this, okay? One strength is that it is ethical. So strength and then ethics, and then specify which ethical, I'm sorry, which ethical guideline are you referring to? Okay. And then you can briefly describe what this means. What does this mean? Research that causes suffering or death of animals must be avoided or minimized. Okay. This study aimed to improve elephant well-being by designing an effective method for testing for disease. That's obviously that is correct, but it's I could add more to it. But the argument is done. Okay, the argument is done, and so and then the impact of that. Because of that, what will happen? Now you need to remember that you have started developing a strength. So the impact should ideally tell you about the strength, or this is also referred to as a implication or a conclusion for your evaluative point. Adherence to this guideline made the study ethical and improved the long-term outcomes for animals, trainers, marmots, etc. This is a this is a what? This is an underdeveloped but a point structure. This tells you how to make a point. Get it? So now this is usually the CIE usually say that this is what we want you to do, candidate to demonstrate us. Okay. We try to do a better than this. Okay. Because you get it. So you want to make it very easy for the examiner to want to award you full marks, top band. Okay. And the way to, and without writing too much, okay? So I'm not, what I'm telling you isn't going to increase the point by like double the length, okay? So we're basically just going to add one line before this, okay? Where we say that this is, the study is, the strength of the study that it is ethical. You can use the strength either in the beginning or in the end. Got it? But it is a good idea to write, to either, just make a small plus sign and put it in a circle before you start your point to signify that this is a strength or a weakness. So the examiner is looking to be, for high quality points, make it very easy for the examiners to determine what the candidate is doing. And the candidate should do it very explicitly. Okay. So that's important. So you can put a plus sign over here. Ideally, you can start with the strength, right? That this is the strength of the study, is that it is ethical. Then you specify which ethical guideline. And then you briefly, in one phrase, don't write a new sentence on this. Just open a bracket and tell them about it. This is not an aesthetics paper. So in Cambridge, you no longer get awarded or lose marks because of your English unless they can't understand what you are writing. So if they can understand, spelling errors are not a big problem as long as they can understand what you've written. Okay. Grammar, syntax is not important. So get it? So, I mean, of course, don't try to write good English, but don't stretch your answers trying to, improve your grammatical. Don't do that. Like go ahead, put stuff in brackets, okay? Because it's very efficient with your time, okay? So the study aimed to improve elephant well-being by designing an effective method for testing the disease that is specific, okay, but it's not very expanded upon, okay? So this could be a good example of a point that you would want to make if you were like, okay, I've already made points and, I think I'm done with my answer, or I don't have enough time, or and I don't want to overstretch this answer. Or if time doesn't allow, this is good enough, okay, this to get you the top band marks. You are fulfilling the requirements of the examiner's criteria, okay? And so adherence to this guideline made the study ethical. This is a conclusion. So you want to end it like this. And what does it help? It improves the outcomes for animals. It reduces the risks to what? Risk to animals, marmots, as well as trainers. Okay. So you got that. That makes sense, right? So that was a pretty detailed discussion on just one point on ethics. Okay. Now let's talk about the methodological issues. So there's basically two types of issues that we're going to talk about: methodological issues and then issues and debates, etc. So now reliability, using a behavioral checklist, usually now another strength was the use of a behavioral checklist. Now I can actually not only keep this point as a point on reliability, I want you to try to use this new trick that I'm about to tell you. What I want you to do is I want you to try and think about which other aspects of the study can actually be encompassed within this point, the same point. What else is applicable? Now, we know that the study is basically a controlled observation, right? And controlled observations use behavioral checklist. So don't you think it would be a good idea to mention that one of the strength of the study was that, or another strength of using a controlled observation is the use of a behavioral checklist, which is known as an ethogram for animals. Okay, that term has, I have not seen it in most resources these days. Okay, but that is knowledge that your examiners totally have. So it would be a good idea, if you want, you can even just put ethogram in a bracket over here. Okay, which is what it is called when the behavioral checklist applies to animals. So another strength was the use of controlled observations and hence behavioral checklist. So I can do both of those. I can cover both of those things, which detailed the exact operational descriptions of each of the taught behaviors, right? For example, trunk up behavior was described as the distal end of the trunk is held upwards, okay, like this, okay, is held upward either in a loose curve, okay, with the dorsal aspect of the tip of the trunk in close contact. Okay, so that's a long detail. You don't need to write it at this level, okay? But what they're trying to say is that basically the trunk, so I would not use this point because this is a very lengthy description. The trunk here description is actually much simpler and shorter, because simply the ventral the nostrils of the elephant had to be face down. Got it? And so this is what he had to do, right? So any description. So this is actually going to take how many lines? Think about it. This is 2 lines. This is two, and this is 1.5, like 1.5, 3, 4, 5. This is 5 lines. Get it? If you're writing this in the CIE paper, this would be 5 lines just trying to describe your fact, not an efficient technique. Got it? But they're trying to demonstrate to you what they mean by it. Okay. And what they mean by this is simply that the reason why it can become reliable is kid about control observation. When you're using control observations, you are often using behavioral checklist or ethograms, right? So when you do that, you basically are very clear about the exact behavior that would be labeled as trunk here. Okay. These detailed descriptions help to increase the reliability of the observer's decisions regarding whether the elephant passed or failed each aspect of the performance test when they were tested repeatedly. Got it? But I could add and improve this point. Instead of writing 5 lines on this, I could actually take the trunk here example and just tell them very briefly that this is what it meant. Like there was a very specific description of the position of the elephant and the trunk, which was went down in the hands of the trainer. Got it? That's what he had to do. And since this wouldn't this sir, wouldn't this improve validity? Yes, absolutely, Ishal, it would. But we're making a point on reliability as well. So say validity bhi, absolutely, Ishal is right. Because how is it valid? Because you see that they are sure that the elephant is in fact actually showing this behavior. Get it? And that the elephant has actually been trained, which is what the study wants to check, if the elephants can learn the training. And if this can help you understand that or prove that, then that improves the validity of the study. Because what is validity? Measuring what you want to measure. What do we want to measure over here? We want to measure if the elephants have in fact successfully learned or been trained with the SPR method, right? So in order to know that very clearly, you need to have very clear descriptors of trunk hair, what behavior will be labeled as trunk hair. And if you have a behavioral checklist which is clearly defining the behavior, and often they even draw it, this, like a good behavioral checklist or an ethogram that when you give to the observers, it should name the behavior, it should describe it, and it should show you a picture of that. Get it? Maybe even an instructional video, like a trunk wash video. Let's show you a trunk wash video. Okay. Did I show it to you? So what does the trunk wash actually look like? Okay. This is what it looks like. Okay. Take a quick look at this. Okay. Here you go. This is being done over here. You're going to see a very quick trunk wash. Easy peasy. Make sure that. Okay. So that's basically And she commands the elephant to come up. You see the whistle in her mouth?
The first step here is we're going to ask for his nose, his trunk.
That's
Put
a
that
syringe.
saline solution inside and ask him to put his trunk up. He's going to hold it there for a little bit, lets that water soak along
That's
those
trunk up.
epithelial cells. When he's done, he's going to bring the trunk down into the bag. He's going to blow that water out, and it's going to take
Bucket.
those cells from the inside lining of
Blow.
his trunk, and we're going to have a nice sample to test.
There you are, right?
So we got all three of our samples.
Okay. So these are the samples. So now looking at it clearly in a video, would that help the observer know clearly what they're exactly looking for, right? And if they do, then they will be able to exactly or correctly mark that the elephant has actually displayed this behavior, and so that can prove the validity of that. That's the first point that Ishal just made. That's correct. Ishal, I hope this makes sense, right? Is this what you were thinking? And then secondly, because it was done again and again, and it can be done again and again, get it? So that also allowed us to test for the reliability of the results, because of the behavioral checklist, we were able to look at and record how many times did the elephant actually succeed in doing those individual behaviors, or in fact, even the sequence of behaviors. And then finally, the complete trunk washes as well. You get it? Okay. So I hope everybody's clear about this point. We had a very specific discussion about, the facts that we can mention over here. So this is how it could be reliable. Reliability is simply when you measure, when you test something again and again, you get the same or similar results. Okay. They don't have to always be exactly the same. Done. Now we look at subjectivity versus objectivity. Take a quick look at this. Now, this is an important topic. And if you get a named issue on subjectivity and objectivity, this could be a good point that could help you understand this and apply to Fagen. A weakness, this has been used as a weakness in this point. A weakness of the study was that the measurement of the elephant's performance was subjective. Aha. It's a very good point, by the way. And so when we were discussing the study, I think we raised the point, if you remember, that this is going to be a problem. The fact that it is subjective, that I think, got it? I think that he's learned this behavior. Got it? This can lead to, thank you, Iman, trainer bias. Got it? So the trainer could be biased over here. Despite the detailed behavioral checklist, the trainer had to decide whether they felt the elephant would be successful if they were performing a real trunk wash or not. So it was not based on what the markings would be. Got it? They decided that the trainer would decide ultimately, is this behavior good enough to work in a trunk wash? Got it? So that was the actual final criteria, and that criteria is based on your opinion, and opinions and interpretations can be very subjective and biased. Okay, not just whether it matched the description on the checklist or not. So it wasn't just from the checklist. Get it? This is a weakness because the trainers may have been biased towards viewing behaviors as successful when another observer might have interpreted the same behavior as unsuccessful. Got it? So very clearly explain the problem. For example, the angle of the trunk may not have been quite right, or some droplets of fluid may have been spilled. Now, one instructor might think that some of them have been spilled, but I've still got enough, so it's good enough. Another one might say, no, this is not training. He is spilling. Okay. And so he may have done it right this time, but he is still making this mistake. And I don't think he's ready for this. Get it? So interpretation is very different. I mean, you look at movies like, like this Top Gun, etc. And you see that, there is often an argument going on between the superiors that I don't think he's ready, and some people think he is ready, right? Okay. So what is happening over there? There is subjectivity in their opinions and their interpretations. Okay. So that subjectivity, now you should actually talk about, like, so how is this a problem? Okay. So this can be a problem because, because of this bias, it could lead to what? Invalid results. You get it? So what could improve this point, and without adding too much, content at the end, we can simply extend it, and by giving it a conclusion. So we have to give a clear conclusion. Got it? And so you see a weakness, and this is a weakness. Got it? Has been repeated. Okay. So this is a problem, or this is a weakness. You see, there is no negative marking for that, but try and not repeat yourself. Okay. Unnecessarily, because we are short on space and time both. Okay. And then finally, we have what? We've over here, you get to add that this will reduce the validity of the results. Okay. Done. Make sense, everybody? We then have an evaluative point on generalizations and ecological validity. Now, generalizing beyond the sample. Generalizability has another word for it. Okay. It's also called population validity. Okay. What do we call it? Population validity. Okay. So we now another weakness is the small sample. Now, specifically, the lack of the male and the adult elephants in the sample. Okay. So now the main point that you want to remember is that you need to read two, write two strengths. Okay, yeah, I'm going to come to the entire 10 mark answer now. Okay, after this. So once we are done with the evaluations, then in the next class, we start doing papers and we discuss the 10 mark answer. Got it? So basically, now, so it's the sample is small, so it has a generalizability issue. Okay. Finally, and sure, Zana, can you just drop me a message after the, like after Tarabi, right? Could you please? Thank you. Like 10:30. Okay, I'll do that. And so, and any other worksheet that are missing, please let me know the studies. I'll upload all the worksheets as well. We've got specific targeted worksheets that are basically based on the entire paper one format for each of the studies. Okay, there isn't because of the new studies. There is 5 new studies, including Fagen, which we are evaluating right now. These 5 studies do not have many instances of practice questions because they're going to be tested for the first time in the upcoming paper. Okay, which is your paper. So we have very few examples of that. For example, we have the specimen paper. Yes. Okay. And I will solve that for you also. Yes, we will do that together. But other than that, we need more questions. So I've developed questions for you guys, and I've developed worksheets with answers. Okay. So you basically, that's a very important activity that I would strongly recommend you guys for confidence in your exams. As soon as you're done with the study, there are practice questions that I've given for most of the studies. But at the end, I've given you a worksheet. Try to fill out that worksheet on your own and then check your answers. Okay. And more the specific discussion on worksheets will come later as well about exactly how to do them. Okay. You can use different methods, but there is a couple of methods that I advise, two main techniques that I advise that you should follow. Okay. To get the optimum results. Okay. And get you to be better prepared for your CI. Now, another weakness is the small sample size. Now, this is also called generalizability problem, but this is also referred to as population validity. It's the same thing, okay? And this knowledge can be useful in certain instances in your paper, and we can discuss this when we are solving papers. So specifically the lack of, this is specified, what is missing? No males, and there were no adult males. Got it? So there was only one adult female, and she failed to learn the full trunk wash sequence. Older elephants may be able to learn SPR reinforcement training, whereas which could have been different from this animal because this particular 50-year-old female suffered from physical issues that might have affected her behavior. And it's been stated that the Mawat said she might have impaired vision or trunk weakness, right? Okay, individual, or even a growth. So if I were you, I would actually make this entire sentence, a bit more efficient. By that, what I mean is that, you're writing too much. Okay. Now, this entire sentence is going to cost you around, like, like, think about it, like, this is 4.5 to 5 lines again. Okay. Now, you can actually say more than this in lesser space and lines. Okay. So why not? Got it. So I'm being very efficient and paper oriented in this discussion, because we can only just talk about how to evaluate and then talk about efficiency. I think this is, since the last study and everybody is familiar enough with evaluations, I think it's a good time to talk about how you need to make your points very efficient in how you form them. She also had an abscess, or a growth on her foot, which made her impatient and unfocused. Oh, that's another thing. So it's actually like what, more than 5 lines probably. Now, this could all be said in definitely fewer words, and so that is something I would recommend. Stay specific, but don't stretch unnecessarily your points. All of these factors mean it is not possible to generalize her lack of learning to other older elephants. The conclusion is good. It's very good because it's not a generic conclusion. It doesn't say it's not generalizable to other elephants. Okay. So you could say that it is not generalizable to older elephants, as well as there were only these young four females that had been born and bred in captivity. Makes sense? So they were probably more used to interacting with or being trained, okay, by humans. Maybe that is not the case for even young female or male elephants in the wild. Does that make sense? Got it? So I could actually maybe cut this to a bit, make this a bit more efficient. And for this point, I could add the point that I just mentioned. Okay. Could you please write in public, please? Okay. So Simra's got a question. She's saying, can one point also be that these results might not apply to exactly, absolutely, what we just said? Okay. That's the point that we just made, Simra, right? Did that make sense to you? Okay, and why? I've also given a clue on, like, why is that the case? Because these young elephants were born in captivity. Remember that from the study, we know that they were born in captivity. So maybe they're more used to learning from humans. They've been trained on other tasks as well. So maybe they're better at it than elephants in the wild, right? So that could be a good point. Okay. Now, generalizing it to everyday life, or applying it to everyday life, or ecological validity are terms that we could use over here. Ishal is another. Could you guys please write in public so everybody knows what I'm answering? Now, a strength of the study is that the data was collected in a lively, naturalistic setting. Very nice. For example, large groups of tourists often gathered during training sessions. Plus, there were many distracting noises from animals in the surrounding jungle. Okay. This increases the ecological validity, suggesting that it would be possible to achieve similar results with elephants in their normal settings, such as a zoo or even a safari park. This is a more efficient point, and it's very specific. Ishal, could you write this in public? In public, please. Thank you. So now you're arguing. This is one way of making this point. It's not the only way. Okay. So the strength is that it was done in a lively and a naturalistic setting. Okay. Now, so for example, large group of, so usually you do have, now when we were training them, they would have a lot of these tourists that would come in. Now Nepal is a very, a lot, because of, it's like the Mount Everest and everything. So Nepal is a great tourist spot, and it has like amazing landscapes. It's got like mountains and, like, beaches, and so it's got a lot, okay, to offer. So very different landscapes. So tourists are a regular thing over there. So they had a lot of tourists. Plus, there were many distracting noises from animals in the surrounding jungle. Okay, which happens in real in their in safari parks, in zoos, because in safari parks you would have people going around in their jeeps. Okay, that happens. So they're used to interacting with people. So it increases the ecological validity, suggesting that it would be possible to achieve similar results with elephants in their normal setting. But I can flip this point. We can easily flip this point, which could be considered a good skill by the examiner in the CIE. Why is it impressive? Because the examiners are say that the child knows that the same point, the same thing, the ecological validity, it is there. The study is ecologically valid for these specific reasons, like they mentioned in this point. But it's not, I can flip it and say that it's not ecologically valid because basically it cannot be applied to animals purely in the wild. Got it? That don't get to interact too much with humans. Okay, it doesn't apply to them. Make sense? Okay, so you got that. Okay, so this is there done, but it still says it only applies to elephants in zoo or parks, meaning captivity. Exactly, right? So Simra, you picked up on that. That's correct. Okay. And Ishal's asking, sir, could wild elephants take longer to be trained due to less? Absolutely, right? So you could write that in your point, okay? So I would encourage you guys to go ahead and try rewriting these evaluative points in the proper format, okay? So there is like understanding the argument, but also knowing and developing the exact thing in the right format. Okay, that's really important. So try and practice that on our WhatsApp group, and you can tag me also. You will have a lot of other students that have very good understanding of this. They can help you out. I'll try to monitor it as well. You can tag me on the final thing that you guys have agreed with or you think is really good quality. But please don't bombard me. It's a really busy time. I'm working on a lot of content for you guys. So if I'm slow, and other people will respond, and that's what I prefer. I prefer you guys interact. But as soon as I get the time, I do take a look at it. And if there's some advice that I want to give to you guys, I will give it to you. Okay. So I would recommend that you start trying to develop some of these points on your own. Now, the next issue and debates, this is the last table, is so now this is individual versus situational explanations. So elephant 5 was the only elephant which failed to learn the trunk was sequence within the time available, right? This could have been due to individual differences, right? Very good. So this is supporting individual explanations. So you could say individual differences, you could say individual explanations, or got it. So she was much older than the other elephants. She may have had physical problems, and she did have physical problems. Okay. Um, yes. Okay. Like blowing out the fluid, for example. So she couldn't learn a new point has been made because we already have other points on this. Okay. Maybe she was not able to learn the blowing behavior because of trunk weakness. There is a possibility of that, right? Okay. So, of course, Maisha, just let me finish this and then you can ask your question. In fact, you can ask it right now also. So, I'll just come to you after I'm done with this. So, this is arguing that there are individual factors. Alternatively, so when you're making a point, if they give you an argument about individual situational, you could ideally you should try or could try to make arguments on why it's individual, but then also make arguments for why there is situational. Alternatively, her slower learning may have been due to situational factors. This is an excellent format that you should follow. For example, the trainers may have responded differently to her and aspects of the environment were different, such as distraction from the young calf, okay? Or even the crowd, okay, of the tourists that would gather a lot of times, okay? So you could have mentioned that. Make sense? So this is a very good way of handling this. Usually, if you get a named issue, like if in a question, they ask you to do individual and situational arguments. If that's specifically asked, one of the extra things that you could consider doing, if you have the time, is that you could actually add a conclusion at the end. And the conclusion should be that psychologists should consider both. They should consider the individual as well as the situational factors, okay, when they are drawing conclusions, okay, or drawing conclusions or applying these to other situations. Okay, applying the findings of the results to other situations in everyday life. Okay. So now the next point is applications to everyday life, okay, which is a very easy point. You usually tie this with another evaluative issue called usefulness. So how is it applicable and useful? Because psychology wants to be useful. It does not want to be a stack of papers lying at the back of a library catching dust. Psychology, one of the main objectives of all psychological research should be, and they are evaluated on this, is that they have the ability to be applied to everyday life. So this study is very useful and can be applicable for improving captive animal welfare. Fagen has developed a relatively safe and efficient way of training captive elephants to cooperate during critical veterinary procedures. The trunk wash is central to the management of testing and management of tuberculosis in animal sanctuaries and zoological parks, both in Nepal and Sri Lanka, Thailand, India. Okay. So these countries have a lot of, animals are a big part of their culture, like we discussed in the background of our study. This is important because not only does it help to maintain the health and the well-being of these incredible burdens, beasts of burden, right? Which is what they're also referred to, because they're very useful to the economy as well, right? And they have religious, significance for many of these countries. But it also reduces the cases of TB in humans. Remember that term, zoonotic, okay? Which means basically that this disease has the risk of being transmitted, God forbid, to humans, which is very dangerous. Okay, we remember the Wuhan instance for COVID, which is the official story. I don't think that's the truth, by the way, but let's not go there. Who can catch the disease from infected elephants? Okay, so that could be quite dangerous to humans and elephants both. Furthermore, Fagan's technique can easily be adapted to teach other behaviors through positive reinforcement. Oh, this is an excellent extension of the point. Okay. But you are going to develop something to this degree, particularly if they've asked you to, if they've named it, if they say, develop, make a point on, or the named issue that they give you in the 10-mark question could be, or in the 10-mark question, or if you get a targeted, maybe say a 4-mark question asking you to evaluate the application to everyday life, or two different ways. Or if they don't even mention two different ways, but the question is 4 marks. Now I know that I need to develop this more. And the way I will do that is I'll try to look for two different arguments for the same thing. Get it? And so we have the second argument for why is it applicable to everyday life. Fagan's technique can be adopted to teach other behaviors, right? Because we've established that, they can learn. So if they can learn a trunk wash, they can learn other things as well, right? So for example, Dean explains how animals as diverse as zebras, macaws, tortoises, and tropical fish have all been trained to undergo procedures, including blood samples, X-rays. They've been trained to give blood samples, to take X-rays, to get transported to new environments using rewards without using anesthesia. These important advances in veterinary practice reduce the need for manual retraining, restraint, sedative drugs, tranquilizing darts, okay, is not needed. And you will need some very highly expensive and highly trained experts to facilitate all of those procedures, which are not only dangerous but also very expensive. Okay, decreasing the stress and improving the well-being, and in fact also reducing our costs to the Nepalese what economy. You get that? Okay, so the costs go down, the well-beings improve. Okay, so we would have healthier, elephants, more elephants. We can, because they also had the problem of, at one point in time these were endangered species. So you can also help to reverse that, okay, and really help the ecology amongst other things. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap on the studies evaluations discussion. Obviously, this was not an exhaustive discussion. In the detailed notes, you will be able to find the evaluations on even more evaluative issues, which are totally probable. Usually the discussions that we have in class cannot be exhaustive all the time, but there is the notes that you can look at. If there's any question, you can also ask me. And then there is a question about the background of all studies that Maisha wants to ask. Go ahead and ask that, please. And so most of the background, so there's a question, could you please propose this in public as well? Are lengthy and maximum marks we can get? Yes. So her point basically is that you see the background can have very sophisticated and complicated information. And so since it's only one, the questions we get on them are usually 2 marks, but can go up to 4 marks. Is it worth going through all of that trouble? Got it? ठीक है? Oh, thank you so much. Okay. You guys are amazing too. Okay. So the point is that, so the idea is basically कि आपने ये देखना है कि, so she's saying that can I leave the background? Now, the simple answer is yes, you can. But the recommended suggestion that I would give you is that you don't have to memorize everything about it. Okay. You just need to take out the core point from that. Okay. And the core points have been discussed in the PowerPoints. Got it? The detailed notes, do I need to put everything there? Because there are many students that say they want to know everything. Okay. Many of the students that are taking psychology are they're academically very strong students, and they have the capacity to absorb a lot of the content. And so the detailed notes will have everything. But if you want to know the specifics, you can simply check out the PowerPoint, which will also have almost everything that you need to know. But it's been targeted. It's more targeted. So, and it will feel a lot lighter because I've designed the PowerPoints to try to, make the content more chewable and, like easy to absorb. Okay. And so I hope I've answered your question. That was a very good question. Okay. I hope that helps. And that's why I've got kids asking me, please upload learning approach detailed notes. Okay, sure. Okay, I'll do that. Done. So everything's going to be on the drive. Remember to do the worksheets as well. There is recorded lectures for many of the topics as well. Okay, but you should focus on only those areas of the videos that you have a problem understanding. Okay, and you can also ask questions on the WhatsApp group. Take care of yourself. I'll see you guys in the next class. Toodaloos. Bye bye. Take care, guys. Signing out. Bye bye.